The plot thickens. So it would seem.
The thick plottins. Get it right.
I mean, that's how it seems today. So the meeting this week that we knew was happening has already gone down, but it did not bring any white smoke, nor did it bring the opposite. Now Steve Kerr is going to grab a 7-iron and the rest and go hang out for a little while, and then they'll circle back and do it again next week. What does that lead to? Only one man knows. And we go out to the River Islands guest line. No, it's not Steve Kerr. It's Tim Kawakami, ladies and gentlemen, from the SF Standard, joining us right here on Willard and Dibs. And obviously, the TK show, part of the Odyssey family, always has great content as well. How are we doing today, Tim? What's up?
I'm good, guys. How you guys doing?
We're doing good. I saw what you wrote. It was either last night or this morning that you were 53-47 in favor of Steve leaving. And I wanted to know if today's news about a meeting already going down and another one scheduled, does that change your number?
Yeah, it's in that area. It's been in that area from the very beginning. I think I said 50-50 the night that he made it very clear that he was emotionally probably ready to go, but you never knew. I've heard that there's certainly not just black or white. He wants to go. He wants to stay. The Warriors want him to stay. The Warriors don't want him. I mean, it's a lot of different issues within that. So you're trying to guess within those kind of segments of logic and decision making, and for it to go this long, he's clearly getting himself ready to make that decision. Doesn't mean he's going to go. I'm in that between 53 and 49 both ways. But I think I would lean to him not returning. But I've been very clear for this, and so whatever anyone wants to take from this, I don't know, and I don't think Kerr has known, and I've reported that nobody knows. This is a conversation. This is even before he made those pretty strong statements after the Phoenix game. I was, sitting 7 feet away from him when he said it with very large impact. But that this was not just one person deciding. It's a lot of intermingling things. What did Joe Lacob and Mike Dunleavy expect of him, of a system? What kind of changes? What kind of things that does Steve Kerr want to ask of them? Was it going to be for 1 year? Is it going to be for 2 years? What's the dollar amount? It always does get to dollars at some extent, and these are not a minimum of dollars. These are a lot of dollars. That still has to be back and forth. I thought they could get in a room, kind of get a feel for each other in one time. It's going to take more than that now, but if you go down this far, that was my initial thinking. If you prepare yourself to leave such an important job that you've had for so long, sometimes it just becomes inevitable. I don't think it's there, but that's why it's the 53. You take it this far, it's more like there are got to be reasons both sides find to bring it back, because he's kind of dangled himself out over the ledge on this one. I think he wants to. I think he wants to feel what it's like to have left or to almost be ready to leave, and then, okay, maybe I don't want to go. And maybe he's kind of in that netherworld right there. So once you go a long way down the road, like we saw with Klay Thompson, we saw Bob Myers, this is not the same situation. I want to make that clear. But we saw with those situations, once they got it in their heads that they could go, they did go. And maybe Kerr is, not maybe. He definitely isn't that far in his head, but he's headed that way. What will it take to bring him back from the ledge? That's still TBD.
And what do you think those things would be? Like, what are the sticking points that would be on the table, whether it's money, roster, contract length? What do you think is the great divide between the two sides?
I don't think they even really know what it is. I just think it's some things have been kind of indirect, and style. Change the style. Well, what does that really mean? Well, they want him to want to be back. Steph even said that way. Well, what does that mean? Like, if he says, yes, I can adjust, do you really mean you can adjust? Or he did adjust at times, obviously with Jimmy Butler coming in, obviously at times with Jonathan Kuminga. Do you really want to be it, or are you just saying that? Are you convinced? Are you convicted to do this? I think they just got to get a feel for what's being said, not just the words, but the feeling behind it. Do you really, if they draft, they have a chance to draft somebody who doesn't quite fit the system, will Steve Kerr be all the way on board? Or will he, if the Warriors draft somebody who fits exactly for the Steve Kerr system, will he really, go other different ways that they would like? I don't know. I think, again, that's what has to be hashed out. Maybe this is why it's taken more than one meeting, but I don't think it's this dollar amount, this year's amount. It's if it was that simple, I think there would have been a yes or no by now. It's not that simple. It's Steve Kerr needing to know in his heart whether they are 100% sure that he's the guy, and it's them needing to know 100% that Steve Kerr wants to be the guy, not just for the previous Warriors teams, for the future Warriors teams. And they got it. That's still TBD. And it was complicated going into this. This is why Kerr set it up this way. He's not Don Nelson, who would be doing this with 2 years left on his contract, right? That's, this is a guy who's come to the end of his contract. He set it up that this would demand, more than knowing Steve like I do, I think he's really set this up to force himself to confront, this could be over. Okay, how do I feel? And I think he's still going through that.
Tim Kawakami is with us here on 95.7 The Game, Willard and Dibs. Tim, to your knowledge, is this Steve Kerr is too outspoken about other issues situation? Is that a thing for management or not?
No, I'm sure they haven't loved everything, every moment. But I think, again, it's indirect. I don't think it's ever been said to him clearly because of the times he's spoken out. Clearly, the New Yorker article, he spoke out. Clearly, on my podcast, he's spoken out. I think it's more Kerr has understood maybe at times that there were some things that they wished he didn't go quite as far on. Direct time when Joe Lacob said, "You shall not do this." No, I don't think that's happened. I've never even heard Joe Lacob say that privately. But it's more like, yeah, you know what? This guy is in the office. I've been with him. I worked really well with him for 10 years, and he kind of does some stuff that I don't always love, but he's a good worker. But do I want to sign up for another 2 years of that? And maybe if he didn't quite do that, I would feel that, but I don't know if I'm going to tell him that. That's where they're at in this relationship. I don't dispute that Kerr is feeling some of this, but I don't think it's ever been put on the table. Maybe it was Monday. I don't think so. I just think it's more like, yeah, they probably didn't love when I said that about Trump, right? Or maybe I could have, there was times when the season ticket base might have been hit because I said this. I don't think it's ever been discussed. I don't think it's ever been said, don't do it. Again, he does it, right? He doesn't do it every time, but he has it, which I respect about him. It's 100% respect for it. Sometimes, things anybody says might not be beloved by who you work with, and you understand it. You get it with a look, or you get it with a kind of something somebody doesn't tell you. But I don't think it's a thing. I think it's part of this relationship that has existed for years, that is, loaded with some other elements, but is all part of it. It's part of who Steve Kerr is. It's part of what a billion, $9 billion franchise is. It's just part, percentages, things that they have to discuss if it really does fit anymore. But I don't think it's ever been straight up, you do this too much, you say this too much, we didn't like you when you said that. I don't think that's been discussed, and I don't think it will be discussed. It's interpretations of what you feel about, and maybe you could go over here. But there is one true thing about this. Steve Kerr is the right guy to coach this team. And I don't think anyone has ever, at least with the Warriors, maybe Steve Kerr hasn't felt that into the future at times, but I don't think anybody in the Warriors thinks he's the incorrect person to coach his team. Is he the right person? If he isn't sure, if he doesn't know, that's where this becomes, something they have to hash out still.
And does that become Kerr's ultimate trump card if he does want to do this? The reality that there really isn't anyone else out there. I guess if the Knicks lose and Mike Brown springs free, he could be a guy. But ultimately, would the organization have to capitulate to almost everything Steve wants if Steve, in fact, wants to come back?
Again, it's would it be 100 things? No, but would it be 3 things? I think, yeah. But again, it has to be uttered at some point, right? It has to be decided at some point, but I don't think these are 11 things that you need to hear from us, and we shall grant you 6 of them. That's not how this is going. It's, do you feel right about us? Do we feel right about you? Let's have the conversation that we do feel right about each other. I thought it could be done in one time in the room, but it is not. It's going on. I think, listen, if you want to look at this, if Steve Kerr remaining the coach is the optimistic view, which I think is generally most people's view on this, the fact that it wasn't decided in one sit down probably tells you that he's thinking hard about it. And he's the one who would probably break it off, more suddenly than the Warriors would be. So yes, and they don't have another top candidate. There isn't a better person to coach Steph Curry. Steph Curry and Draymond Green don't want anyone else to coach them. But you face the reality that they could do that. There would be another coach, whoever it is, if Steve Kerr leaves, whenever that happens. But yeah, I think Steve put himself into this because he wanted to force himself to feel what it's like to be the ex-Warriors coach without actually being the ex-Warriors coach. And I think he's going through that now. The fact that he didn't pull the trigger yesterday or the day before leaves you to believe that there's some issues outstanding in his mind, maybe some things he needs to hear from Joe Lacob and Mike Dunleavy. I think that's true, but also some things he's got to figure out for himself. Like, what does he do next? Like, literally, what does he do next? I've said this, and he said in the New Yorker piece, I don't think he's going right into politics. I don't think he's not going to run for governor or senator. Like, he's going to talk about politics. He's going to be, want to have influence in politics, but he's not going to go run and beg for votes and beg for money. I think he wants to be a coach. I think that's what he's born to do. If you want to be a coach, even if you want to break, you quit the Warriors and Steph Curry, the first thing you're going to do is, I kind of like to coach Steph Curry, right? I mean, at some point. So, that's not the most, he could make this decision based on many other things. But the fact that it hasn't been decided leaves, the door's open. The door's open. He's left it open now for 12, 13 days. That must mean there are reasons for him to keep it open. And I would say, whatever percentage you want to put on it, it's not automatic. And that's one thing I've stressed from the beginning of this, even before the Phoenix game. This is not an open and, this is not something that's going to be decided by 2 things. It's going to be decided by 15 things, 18 things, 20 things. And maybe they're through 9 of them and they've got half of them left to go. But it was never going to be, I'm just done with it. Goodbye. It felt like that on Friday. And believe me, in that room, it felt like that. It still was not going to be just that. Because if it was just that, he would have quit on Saturday. And he did not. And I give him full respect for this. He's not doing this to play anybody. If he was, he would have done it last year with 1 year left on his contract. Again, we saw Don Nelson do this time and again, always with years on his contract, always. Steve Kerr's doing it with nothing, with no contract. If the Warriors get sick of him doing this, they could say goodbye, and they won't, because he's a quality guy who's the best person set up to coach his team. Maybe he wants to hear some things from them that they haven't said, and maybe they won't say them. Then he'll probably won't be the coach. But maybe they will say them, or maybe he won't require them to say them. Again, these things are still very much TBD, and I know it doesn't, we want declarative things. I would love declarative things. I would like to write declarative things. I'd like to tell you declarative things. But my most declarative thing, which I've said for 2 weeks now, this ain't decided. And it would be wrong to think every sign points exactly to one thing, because it doesn't.
TK, how much of a linchpin is it? In other words, their roster decisions that will come after, how affected are they by Steve's decision?
A lot. Again, who's the replacement? I think that's a big deal. If it's Mike Brown, again, I don't think it's going to be, but they would theoretically, the Knicks could fire him, and the Knicks are being the Knicks. I don't know if there would be a lot of changes. If it's somebody from the staff, Terry Stotts or Jerry Stackhouse, I don't think there would be many changes. It might not be. I think it would. If it's not Mike Brown, they would like a pretty major different kind of coach, a younger coach, analytics driven, development. I know you get a Jonathan Kuminga in, you grab hold of that guy, and that's who you build it around. That's not what's happened with this team for obvious and solid reasons over the last decade. Then that could be some changes. Like there could be like a different style. Do you imagine if Draymond's still on the team? I don't know. Do you imagine if Jimmy Butler's still on the team? I don't know. Like these are questions I think they just ask themselves, not saying that they would be decided. I think they would like to get younger, but then they're not going to trash a season that's of Steph Curry's remaining, good years. They're not doing that. So I don't think it'd be incredibly dramatic, but I think the two names, Draymond and Jimmy Butler, would be the ones that at least they'd have to run through their heads and figure out what they're going to do. It does put them in a certain amount of salary cap situation, holding on to both of them. That's okay. They're really good players. Maybe in a new situation, in the new coach, new system, you have other conclusions based on that than they've had. I think it's going to head in that way if there's a new coach. I don't know if it would be instantly snap your finger, they're both gone, but I think there would be harder questions asked about this roster than it would be with Steve Kerr for sure if he remains as the coach.
Yeah, without a doubt. And the lottery is coming up here in about 10 days and then a pick after that. I wonder, Tim, if some of the conversation is about the past, or do you think the majority of it is how we move going forward? You mentioned Jonathan Kuminga, and it seems to me there's some disconnect between the drafting of him and the playing of him over the course of years. Do you think these conversations are more about the future, or are they still rehashing some of the past?
That's a future. It's a future. I don't think they want to go through, pick by pick. And Steve Kerr was on board for the Kuminga picks, on board for the James Wiseman pick. It just didn't work out. But, sometimes when you are in that spot, you have to take the player and then you see how it works out. I think it's more like, what kind of players do we want to see on this roster? They would be telling each other in the future, what kind of offensive system works in games that Steph Curry is not in it. I think that's a big deal. I think that really hit them this year. The Jimmy Butler injury basically shaped everything that's happening now, is because they were at a loss without him. Because Steph missed games too. Well, guess what? Steph's 38. He's going to miss games. What can you do when Steph Curry is not on the floor? And maybe Jimmy Butler's on the floor. What if they're both off the floor? What if neither one's having a good game? This does happen later in your 30s. You can't just say, well, wait, we don't have them. This is the system we run. Oh, well. I think those are the philosophical decisions. Can we run a more isolation kind of offense? I know that Steve Kerr would not love this, but he's done it. Can we go after players who are not the pass, cut, read, react kind of players? Can that be part of who they are, not part of the things they're trying to run away from? Those I think, are the discussions that they're having. It's not you were wrong and you did this. If those were the discussions, I don't think they'd have very many more discussions. I think it's more, okay, this is who we are now. We know who we were 3 years ago. We know who we were 7 years ago. Who we are now, what does that look like? What does that look like in the way we build this roster? What does that look like, in the schemes we run and the matchups we're trying to find and how we're building things around Steph Curry when he's 38 and he's missed a lot of games, and Jimmy Butler is going to be out maybe till December, right? I mean, it's hard to underplay what that Jimmy Butler injury did, because it just changed the tenor of this season and the way Steve Kerr at least thinks about maybe the next few seasons. And maybe he'll feel a lot better about it after conversations, and maybe he won't. But I do think it's okay. We've done it this way. It's been the way we had to do it. It's the way has won championships. The way it looked really good last year when they beat Houston in the first round. It can't go that way with these players at this age. So what does that mean? What does that look like? And does Steve Kerr completely believe in it? Is he part of that discussion, or is he fighting it? And then maybe some different decisions have to be made.
Tim Kawakami with us on Willard and Dibs. TK, this is a little bit of an extension of a question I already asked you about, like how much are roster decisions affected by Steve, but we got a quote from Mark Spears a couple of weeks ago where he's like, Steph Curry knows that they're going to make every attempt to bring in another big fish with him. And I've heard you say, as long as Joe Lacob is doing off seasons, he's going to be big game hunting. Is that completely just flat? That's the way it is, or whether Steve and Draymond, et cetera, are there, does that sort of change that philosophy potentially?
But yeah, it's always case by case. I that's why I say they're not tanking, right? So they're going to want more good players. Now, would they want a 41-year-old player who's in LA right now? I think they probably would, but who's the coach who's going to be working with that locker room? LeBron James and Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green and Steph Curry. You do have to have that as part of your factoring. But no, they'll not stop wanting to get good players. It's just the good players are most likely to get at this point are older players. Why? Because their older players are available. But yeah, I don't foresee them tanking and going for a draft pick. I'll put it that way. And if you're not tanking and going for a draft pick, you're probably trying to be as good as you possibly can. And that would be leading towards trying to add another star, which they always do. But, it's been Lauri Markkanen in the past. It's been players of different ages. I don't know what kind of firepower they have to get that player, but absolutely would imagine whoever the coach is, absolutely if it's Steve Kerr, but likely if it's anybody, that they would be trying to add talent, not subtract. That's just who they're not selling those tickets for whatever price they're selling in order to have a mediocre team. Now, they did have a mediocre team this year, but obviously there were reasons for that.
I mean, let's say they move up in that lottery. Is that top 3 pick available for Giannis?
Oh, sure. They could get Giannis, absolutely.
Okay.
But, I don't know that they can get him. If they can, almost anything is on the dock for that one, except for Steph. But also, like, if it's this draft, top 3 pick, that might be the player that can play in a playoff game, right? Or playoff series. These are great. Really, this is a great draft. So you can go a lot of different ways. There's no hard and fast. It's where are you? What's available? What's the system you're running? Who can you get? I think with this quality of draft, if they get in the top 4, I think the likelihood is that they'll keep it. But obviously, it's really valuable, and so maybe you can turn it into something. Trey Murphy is a player they've loved, and that New Orleans hasn't wanted to move. I mean, maybe for a top 3 pick, you can get him. But man, if you're talking about 2 timelines, I know people hate that.
Yeah, there we go.
But it's not even what's this timeline now, right? What really is this timeline?
Yeah.
It's not a timeline anymore. Maybe of the fumes of it. You do have to have good players for the next 10 years. And if you get a player who can help you right away and be the star for the next 5 years, this is the draft to do it in. If you get one of those picks, I mean, I'd be hard-pressed if I'm the Warriors to think I'm moving it for anybody short of Giannis.
Murphy's salary match with Draymond Green, by the way, just saying.
I like what you did there, TK. Forget 2 timelines, no timeline. That's what the next.
Yeah, you need a timeline, right? You need a timeline, so it can't be a 0 timeline.
All right. TK, thank you. Appreciate it always.
You got it, guys.